So let's talk about losing weight, or more specifically, losing fat. I'm Leo Babauta from Zen Habits. This is something that I am diving into personally, or I have been for years now, but I'm doing personally right now. And so I'd love to share with you the research that I found, or at least the evidence-based, uh, tactics that I'm using. And I've boiled them down into a protocol for losing weight or losing fat. Um, this is a protocol that I am actually using right now and that I've recommended to others and they've seen some success in. But before I get into that protocol, I want to make some notes that are really, really important. So first of all, I don't think everybody should be losing weight or fat. Like, this is not necessarily something that you should have as a goal. I think that we have a bias in our society towards, people who have some extra fat on them or who aren't thin. And so there's a lot of cultural stuff that's wrapped up into this. And this video is if you are not wrapped up in that and you're not letting this like kind of trigger your insecurities and, there's not like eating disorders. This is definitely not for anyone who has a eating disorder or who has had an eating disorder in the past and is likely to get that again if they start to deal with some of these kinds of things. So that's the first caveat. You don't have to lose weight. You don't have to lose fat. And I'm not advocating it, but this is for those who do want to, who already have it as a goal and would like some guidance. Second thing is that I am going to advocate some things that require you to actually shift some habits, to actually do things that are different than you might normally do it. And that can be hard at first. So, give yourself a little bit of leeway, some grace, some ability to fall on your face a little bit and like have to make some adjustments. But second, you also have to be willing to embrace something that's different than what you already do. If you're really stuck in how you already eat or how you already do things, then this is not going to be for you. I'm asking you, if you want to follow this protocol, it would require you to step outside of your comfort zone and do things differently. So that said, if you are one of those people who already have this as a goal, aren't likely to get into like eating disorders or really just like, tangled up in all of the insecurities and things that we have, and you want some evidence-based ways to actually hit this goal, and you're willing to do some hard things, this is for you. So let's go over the actual protocol with all of that out of the way. And if you have some objections, feel free. I don't think this is for everyone, but I do think that this works. So the first part of the protocol is you have to be in a caloric deficit. What does that mean? That means your body is burning an X number of calories. You have maintenance, if you want to stay the same weight, would be that you're eating the same number of calories you're burning. Let's say it was like 2,500 calories is what you're burning as a person during the day each day, and you eat 2,500, you're going to stay about at the same weight, assuming that that's the correct number. So if you want to stay the same, you have to be in caloric balance. Now, if you eat more than you're actually burning, you're going to gain weight. Whether that's muscle or fat, that's another question. But we're not talking about that. We're actually talking about losing, so you have to be in a deficit. So this is how much you are eating. It's going to be less than what you're burning. So for example, if you burn 2,500 calories, you need to be in a deficit. So let's say 2,000 calories. It's a 500 calorie deficit per day, and you'll lose roughly a pound a week. Okay, so you need to be in a caloric deficit. That is number one. But to do that, you have to know how much you're burning. And that is really, really tough. So there's different ways to do it. Of course, there's calculators online. You enter your gender, height, age, weight, generally how active you are. Are you sedentary but work out a couple times a week? Do you have like a really physically demanding job where you're on your feet and moving around a lot? There's different factors like that. So you put those into a calculator and it's going to give you an estimate. But that is just an estimate, is a starting point. Now over time, you can determine what your actual expenditure is, because let's say it was 2,500 and you subtract 500 and you eat 500 calories less than that number that's estimated, and you only lose half a pound a week. Well, what that meant was you are actually only in a deficit of 250 calories a day. And so it actually will give you a better idea is if you track your eating and you track your weight, you will find out what your actual expenditure is. It might take you a few weeks, but you'll come up with a better number. There's ways to calculate that using a spreadsheet. There is an app I use. I'm not being paid. I'm not getting an affiliate or any kind of cut from this, but there is an app that I use, and it's a paid app. And so you really only use this app if you are ready to actually commit to this kind of change. But the app is called Macro Factor. It's on both Android and iOS, and only if it's phone only. You can't use it in your browser, but it is the best app for this goal. And so MacroFactor will ask you some questions in the onboarding, and then it's going to give you an estimate. I think it's a pretty decent estimate, but it's not actually going to be accurate until about 2 or 3 weeks in. If you track for 2 or 3 weeks, track your eating, and you weigh yourself. So that's going to bring us to point number 2, which is that you need to track your eating every day for a certain number of weeks. Now this is not forever, but for a while, you need to track your eating. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you do have to try your best, right? So you don't have to, sometimes you're going to estimate if you're eating out at, wherever, some, chain restaurant, put in your best estimate and it's going to be close enough. That's all we're looking for. If you're eating at home, you can control it a little bit more. If you're cooking your own food, that's going to be more along the spectrum of I'm getting it more accurate. If you want to even get even further, you get a scale, which I recommend. You get a scale. They don't cost that much on Amazon or wherever you want to. Actually, don't use Amazon. Go find it somewhere else. But a scale that goes down to the 0.1 grams. So that's the accuracy we want. And so you need a scale if you want to be super accurate. But if you don't, use cups and teaspoons and tablespoons and so forth. But yeah, you want to be tracking your food. So point number 2 is track your food for a certain number of weeks. Now there are some shortcuts for doing this. One is do what I do, which is you eat the same thing every day. So you track it one day, and then you just copy and paste that in future days, and you make some adjustments each day as needed. But for the most part, I just copy and paste my log into MacroFactor, or if you want a free one, use Chronometer, CRONOMETER.com. It's free. There's a paid one version, but the free version works really well. Track it in there, copy and paste, and then just make adjustments each day. Instead of eating an orange, you ate an apple. Okay, great. Instead of eating 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, you ate 2. Okay, great. So just that's the easy way, which is you eat the same thing-ish every day and then make adjustments to whatever changes there are. The second easiest way is to have a set number of meals that you eat. So let's say it's 5 meals and you just kind of rotate between those, but it's really easy to track that way because you just take, oh, here's the meal that I usually eat. I'm going to, plop it in there. In both apps, you can create recipes, MacroFactor and Chronometer. Same with other apps as well. You can create a recipe and then just choose that recipe when you eat it, and it becomes really easy. I had 1 serving of that recipe, and so forth. So point number 2 in this protocol, first one is you need to be in a caloric deficit. And that means you need to figure out what your actual expenditure is. But point number 2 is you actually need to know how much your intake is, your eating. And the way you do that is by tracking. Now, both Chronometer and MacroFactor are actually very easy for tracking. Okay, so point number three is weigh yourself regularly. I weigh myself every day. At first, it was like every 2 or 3 days, and now I do it every day. And the reason I do this is because it's just giving me a data point. It's going to fluctuate every day because of water and how much salt you had and all of that. Maybe you ate out and there's a lot of salt, and so you're going to retain a lot of water, and so you might gain some weight the next day. It doesn't matter. Your day-to-day fluctuations don't matter, but the data points actually really help, because if you get enough data points over time, you're going to see the trend is what matters. That trend is going down. Now, macro factor does a really good job of showing you the trend versus the day-to-day fluctuations. So they kind of do some kind of weighted average that I think is much more helpful. It's a smoother line than the jagged kind of scale weight. But that said, I weigh myself and I put the scale weight into macro factor, and I think you can do the same thing on Chronometer, is you put your scale weight in and it will show you a graph over time. And what we want to do is week by week look at like what was the change from this week, from last week to this week, right? So if it was half a pound, okay, great. Now we can make some calculations because we had an initial estimate of our calorie expenditure. We created a deficit and we've been aiming for that, and then we actually tracked what we actually ate, and then we tracked our scale weight, and we see the change over time over the last week. We can now calculate what is my actual expenditure compared to what I'm eating. So this is actually calculatable, and after 1 week you're going to have a better estimate. After 2 weeks, even better. And after 3 weeks, it should be pretty accurate. If you track your eating every day for 3 weeks and your weight, your expenditure estimate will be much more accurate. And after 4 weeks, even better, but it's not going to get a lot better after that. And so MacroFactor does a good job of this. This is going to sound like an ad for MacroFactor. You can do this using Chronometer and a calculator. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but it's really basically just like what was my actual scale weight change over a week compared to what I thought it was going to be, and that will let you calculate what your actual expenditure is. So um, first point, be in a caloric deficit. That's kind of hard to figure out what that deficit is. But the second point and third points will help you to calculate that. So second point, track your eating. Third point, track your weight. And then you're going to have a much more accurate estimate over time. Okay, fourth point is we want to lose fat and not muscle. If you have a certain amount of muscle and a certain amount of fat and you want to lose weight, well, there's going to be a certain amount of fat and muscle that's going to be lost as you lose weight. Let's say you lose 10 pounds or, let's say 5 kilos, right? Some of that is going to be fat and some will be muscle. That's inevitable. But what the ratio is something that you can actually influence. And I'm going to talk about that. But point four is we want to prioritize fat loss and not just weight loss. And so to do that, for point four of prioritizing fat loss is strength training. Uh, Regular strength training is important. And I'm going to give you some specifics, but it really doesn't matter what the specifics are. As long as you're doing some strength training every week, you will be increasing the ratio of muscle loss to fat loss. And that's what we want fat loss to muscle loss. We want more fat loss and less muscle loss. In fact, we want to like minimize the muscle loss. And for some people, you might even stay the same with muscle while losing fat. Great. And there's going to be a small number of you that are actually going to gain a little bit of muscle while losing fat. It's kind of the holy grail of weight loss, but it's great. To prioritize fat loss over muscle loss when you lose weight, if you're in a caloric deficit, make sure you're doing some kind of strength training. Now I'm going to go into point 5, which is the kind of strength training. And then we're going to have point 6, which is another way to prioritize fat loss. But let's look at point 5. So what kind of strength training should we do? I believe full body strength training. So working out all of your major muscle groups, um, 2 or 3 times a week. Now, if you've been training for a while, you can go more, right? If you want to do 3 or 4 times a week, great. If you're like one of those super disciplined people and you have been lifting for a long time and you want to do 5 or 6 days a week, great. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. But for the average person, 2 or 3 times a week should be good enough. So we want to do full body workouts 2 or 3 times a week. If you want to do a split, instead of full body, that's fine with me, but we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about full body. So full body means upper body and lower body. So lower body would be like squats and kettlebell swings, or squats and deadlifts, or squats and Romanian deadlifts, or squats and lunges, but 1 or 2 different kinds of lower body exercises. And squats could be body weight squats or with, some kind of weight. And I'm not going to go into the details of how to do that. There's plenty of tutorials on squats on YouTube. And then we want some kind of pressing motion and some kind of pulling motion for your upper body. So pressing could be push-ups or bench press or shoulder press. So the weight's going this way. That's a pressing motion. Or bench press if you're laying on your back on a bench and pushing up dumbbells or barbells. It doesn't matter to me. But we want some kind of pushing motion. And then pulling motion could be pull-ups or chin-ups from a bar, right? It could be rows. Look up rows, barbell rows, dumbbell rows, body weight rows. Doesn't matter. We want some kind of pulling motion and some kind of pushing motion for your upper body. And the same thing for the lower body, pulling and pushing. So pushing would be squats or lunges, and pulling would be kettlebell pulls or swings or deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts, something like that. So if you do at least one lower body thing, one of the pulling or pushing, and then an upper body pulling and pushing motion every single workout, then that's all we're looking for. That's the minimal one. Now there are programs that do a lot more than that. Things from starting strength to there's a whole bunch of other strength workout things. I don't care what you do. What I said was the minimum. If you do that, great. 2 to 3 times a week. What we want to is for you slowly build up, but at some point after a few weeks, what we want you to do is to be doing enough that you're really getting to the edge of how much you can do within a safe limits, right? So if you're doing bench press, make sure you have a spotter if you're going to go really hard. If you're doing squats, make sure you have safety rack so that you don't hurt yourself if you fail. But what we want to do is come close to failure. Not failure itself, but close to it, so that it's like, oh, I don't think I could do, if I tried to do another rep, I probably would fail. We don't need to fail. We want to say, like, I don't know if I could do another rep. Maybe I could do one more rep. So somewhere in that range, maybe 2 at the most if I really push myself. So, and if you can, once in a while, push yourself to failure just so you can see. And we want to do about 3 sets per exercise. And most of those sets should be really hard. Okay, so that's point number 5, which is the kind of strength workout to do. If you do full body 2 or 3 times a week, and you are doing the exercises generally, as I said, and you're working hard, you will maintain muscle. Now, you could mess up a little bit of that, right? You might not do the pulling motion for your upper body, might not do exactly the right full body workout. I don't care. You could mess up the number of sets. You might not go as hard as I'm recommending. That's fine. If you're doing strength training to some degree, 2 or 3 times a week, and it's kind of hard at least, you will preserve your muscle as much as possible. If you do it to the degree that I said, that's kind of the best way. Okay, point number 6 is increase your protein. Most people aren't eating enough protein. I'm not one of those protein bros. I'm a vegan. I eat plant sources of protein. But when I'm on a fat loss phase, which I am right now, I eat high protein. And the same thing if I'm in the muscle building phase. Now, if you're in a maintenance phase, you don't have to be in high protein. But muscle building, it really helps to have a decent amount of protein. And it helps even more to eat high protein when you are losing fat. And the reason is if you eat high protein, your muscles will be preserved and fat loss will be prioritized when you're losing weight. When you're in a caloric deficit with high protein, your muscles will be preserved more, especially if you combine it with strength training. I'm going to get to the heart of this protocol, summarize the key points in a minute, but let's talk about protein for a second. So I don't care what your sources are, whether they're plant or animal. I'm not here to tell you to be vegan. I eat plant sources and they work great. But it doesn't matter. I don't care if you eat protein powder or protein bars. I don't care if you eat chicken breasts or fish or beef or whatever. I don't care if you eat tofu or tempeh. Put it into the tracker. It will tell you how much protein there is. We don't need to worry at this stage about complete sources versus incomplete. Don't worry about that. But what we want to do is input it into the tracker and hit a certain target. And so MacroFactor will actually give you a target, but if you want a quick kind of way to look at it is find your goal weight in pounds. And I know a lot of you do this in kilograms, which is fine, but converge to pounds, so your goal weight. So for me, let's say I want to be 168 pounds, right? And I'm 180 right now, so I have 12 pounds to lose. Well, and my goal weight at 168, my target for protein is 1 gram per pound of my goal weight. So 168 grams. Now, you don't have to be exact about that, but generally that's the neighborhood we want to be in. That's going to be a lot more than most people do. If you're a gym bro, that's actually not a lot. Some people go way over 200, 300 grams of protein a day. It's crazy amounts. You don't need that much. But if you find your goal weight in pounds, let's say 170, to be around 170, give or take 5 or 10 grams per day, that is what we're shooting for. So just to give you the neighborhood, I don't care if you're exact. If you hit 160 instead of 170, fine. If you go to 175, fine. But try and get around 170 if that's your goal weight in pounds. Try and get around 170 grams per day. And that's whether you work out or not. So if you do that every day, you're getting some protein in, you're doing some strength training, and you're in a caloric deficit. Those are the 3 most important points. I have a few more tips, but this protocol, if we summarize it, it is be in a caloric deficit, which means subpoint is track your calories, track your protein, track your weight, and in general get better at estimating what your actual expenditure is. MacroFactor will do all of that for you. But it's paid, right? So you can do it by hand in Chronometer, but basically be in a caloric deficit and then strength train in the ways that I said, right? Full body, 2 or 3 times a week, and trying to like go hard, strength train, and then get high protein, a gram per pound of body weight, of your goal weight per day. You will lose fat. It is a guarantee. Now it's going to take time. So point number 7 is give it time. We don't want to lose, 5 pounds a week. We want to be at a moderate level. If we go too high in terms of weight loss, you're going to be losing muscle. So point number 7 is do it at a moderate level. And I think generally for most people, that's about half a pound to a pound a week. For some people who have a bigger body mass, then you can go more. And there's some calculations that you can do. You can say about you know, 0.5%, half a percent of your body weight is a decent amount to aim for per week. But 1% is also fine, somewhere in that range. But basically, about half a pound to a pound for most people, unless you're really big, and then you can do more. For most people, so if you're a 200-pound man, 1% of your body weight is half a pound. Um, and so losing half a pound a week is actually really good. We should be really happy with that. Now, if you lose more, if you go up to 2%, that's fine too. But going above 2% is going to increase your chances of losing muscle, even with the other things that I said. Even if your protein's high, even if you're in a deficit, even if you are doing strength training, you will start to lose muscle at a high rate of loss. So I aim for about somewhere between half a pound and a pound, and I'm about 180 pounds right now, kind of on a downward trend. So if you do that, what that means is, let's say I want to be at 168, right? Which, I don't need to be, but let's just say that's at a pound a week, that's 12 weeks, right? At a half a pound a week, that's 24 weeks. So we're talking about 3 to 6 months is what we're looking at. For a lot of people, that's going to be really hard. And, I actually recommend tracking your eating and your weight during that entire period of 3 to 6 months. Now, not everyone's going to do that, which is fine. You can skip some days. Maybe there's a week you go on vacation and you're like, I'm not tracking at all. I don't care. But in general, tracking will help you to stay on track better. And so if you want to really follow this protocol, then tracking for that amount of time. But give yourself some time. Let it go. Let it be up and down. It's totally fine. But generally, we want to be trending downward over time. Last tip that I want to say is, this is more of a bonus thing, but if you're in a caloric deficit and you're eating high protein, what that means is you don't have a lot of wiggle room because your calories are lower, but your protein is higher. What that means is there's not going to be a lot of extra calories for just eating whatever you want. So you're probably going to have to cut out alcohol, because alcohol is calories without protein, without really any nutrients. You probably have to cut out alcohol to a decent degree. Don't drink more than once or twice a week, and not a lot, or zero. I've cut my alcohol down to zero for the last couple of months. You're probably gonna have to cut out most sweets. I'm not saying you can't eat any sweets. Yesterday I had a vegan peanut butter cup. Uh, I've had pie. I've had cookies. I don't have it every day. For my sweets, I eat apples, bananas, and oranges. That's my sweets. So I eat whole foods. Fried foods, you want to cut those out as much as possible. Junk food, prepared foods, cut out as much of that as you can, or at least minimize it. We don't need to be perfect. You should enjoy your food. That's really, really important. But you also, don't need to just eat every single thing that you have a craving for. And so eating whole foods is really, really helpful. Okay, so this video, as you can see, as I said from the beginning, is not going to be for everybody. Not everybody needs to follow this. Some of you are going to be triggered by eating disorder stuff. For others who are willing to follow this, and this is already your goal, and you're not going to get caught up in eating disorders or body image stuff, you just want to have a science-backed way to actually meet your goals, and this is what we want. Caloric deficit, tracking over time. Track your weight, track your eating. And then strength training, full body, go hard 2 or 3 times a week. Don't go too hard in the beginning. So let yourself build up to it. But after a few weeks, you should be going harder and harder. And after, a month or two, you should be going pretty hard, right? Like, we don't want to kill ourselves or completely burn ourselves out, but go hard enough that you feel it and you're like, I'm really pushing myself. And then have high protein and then give it some time. That's the protocol. Let me know what you think. I know this is going to be triggering for some people. It's not for everybody. It works for me, and it works if you're able to actually do it. Some people are just going to be, I am unwilling to give up my sweets, my alcohol, my fried foods, the usual things that I have. I'm unwilling to eat that much protein. I'm unwilling to track anything. I'm unwilling to weigh myself. That's fine. This isn't for everybody. You can do things your way. There isn't one way to do anything. In fact, you don't have to do this at all. But if you follow it and you're willing to do these things, you will see a huge, huge change over time. Okay, let me know what you think. Thanks everybody. Like this video if you do like it. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you about this. And please do subscribe and share it with others who could use this in their lives. We really appreciate that. Bye, my friends.